Garcia. I'm a graduate student at the California Intercontinental University. This is a presentation on conducting a simple regression for GRC 605, which is a class entitled Business Research Methodology and Quantitative Statistics. So let's start with the agenda. First, we're going to have the results of some of the regression tests that we did on these variables: debt and income, savings and income, and stocks and savings. Again, this is on the same data set that we've been using for the previous two units, Unit 4 and Unit 5. Now with Unit 6, we're using data. A questionnaire was distributed to actually, it was collected from residents in the Midwest, asking them to provide information on variables related to debt and income, savings, income, stocks, and savings. And then we did some regression analysis tests on these variables to look for significance. So we'll be discussing the results of those and then have some takeaways as well. Okay, so the first regression test, the question was, can we predict an individual's debt by knowing their income? And for debt and income, we found no significant result. So the following regression test was conducted. You can see there the null hypothesis states that the slope of the regression coefficient is 0. The alternate hypothesis that the slope of the regression coefficient would not be 0. A simple linear regression was conducted to determine whether debt could be predicted from income, but no significant regression was found. The value there, a negative 0.05, the R-squared value of 0, and a p-value of 0.535, which is, of course, as we know, not significant. On the second regression test, the question asked was, can we predict an individual's savings by knowing their income? So we're comparing on the regression here the variables of savings and income. In this case, we did find a significant result. The null hypothesis stated that the slope of the regression coefficient 0. The alternate hypothesis that the slope of the regression coefficient not 0. A simple linear regression was conducted to determine whether savings could be predicted from income, and we found that that was true. A statistically significant regression emerged with the value of a negative 0.91, an R-squared value of a 0.82, and a p-value of 0. Thus, the test rejected the null hypotheses, and we predicted that savings can be predicted from a person's income. On the third regression test, we looked at the variables of stocks and savings. The question that we were asking is, can we predict an individual's portfolio, stock portfolio, value by knowing their savings? So the following regression test, the null hypothesis, the slope of the regression coefficient 0, the alternate hypothesis, the slope of the regression coefficient not being 0. So a simple linear regression was conducted to determine whether stocks could be predicted from savings, and a statistically significant regression emerged with a beta value of 0.28, the R-squared value of 0.08, and a p-value of 0. So thus the test rejected the null hypothesis, and we predicted that stocks that the portfolio value of stocks could be predicted from a person's savings. So some takeaways from the regression analysis. PSPP was the software that we used to do these regressions. PSPP can be used to perform linear regressions. If a regression coefficient is statistically significant, we found 2 of the 3 tests that we conducted in this case to be statistically significant, then the p-value is less than a 0.05. Also, another takeaway: the slope of a regression line is always called, also known as the regression coefficient, and the R-squared value is always between 0 and 100%. Also, for this project, we wanted to discuss some articles that we used, 3 articles that we used during the quarter that we found particularly useful. These are not really specific to the regression portion, but these are 3 articles that I found particularly useful during the quarter. You see the 3 are outlined here on the bibliography section. Let's move to the next slide, and we'll talk about those a little more closely. So the first article is entitled Trochim on Correlation. I found this very useful for understanding really the basics of correlations and what that is. Another useful article was The Logic of Hypothesis Testing by David M. Lane. This was very useful for understanding the basics of hypothesis testing. And the third article that I chose, Research Methods in Psychology, published an article entitled Understanding the Null Hypothesis Testing. So I found this one to be very useful for a deeper understanding of the null hypothesis testing. Now you'll notice I didn't choose any articles on regression, and last week we had a presentation on chi-square. The reason why is that I found that when I understood these three articles, which come from Unit 4, when I understood these, the rest of the things kind of fell into place. And I think that you might find that to be true as well. When you understand the basics of hypothesis testing, what the null hypothesis is, what the alternate hypothesis is, and a basic understanding correlations, the rest of the elements like chi-square and the regression, that kind of fell into place for me, and I understood really what we were doing with those. So that's why I chose these three articles in particular. Well, thank you for watching this presentation. Any questions?